All right, looks like we're live. Yes, we are live. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday afternoon, maybe morning if you're on the West Coast. My name is Ben Salisbury. I'm excited to be here with you today for another live broadcast on LinkedIn. I'm coming to you from beautiful downtown Covington, Kentucky, and I think I've got a really great program for you today. I'm really glad that you tuned in. I want to give just a minute or two for a few more people to hop on. While we're waiting, I would love to hear in the comments, maybe introduce yourself, tell me where you're uh, zooming in from or dialing in from, maybe a little something about your company. Just, use the comments to introduce yourself. I also want you to feel free to use the comments to ask questions. I can see the comments from the broadcast studio here, and so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. We'll get started in just a minute. I've been showing this a lot lately, and people get a kick out of it. You would never know that times have changed in the wine and spirits business because we got people doing things the same way they did 20, 30 years ago. And to be honest, if you're doing things the way you did 5 or 6 years ago, you're already getting left behind. Times really have changed. And what I want to do today is go into, what has changed and how to recalibrate for it. That's really what we're here today. There really is a need to recalibrate, to assess where you are, and to make the necessary adjustments. Hello, Andrew from San Diego and Cameron from Austin. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you're just now joining, feel free to use the comments to introduce yourself. I'm going to go ahead and launch right into today's program. We're recording this, so if you come late or you have a colleague in mind that you'd like to share this with, we'll have a link to the recording. You'll be able to find the recording right here in LinkedIn without any problem. Hey, Dean. Hi, Allison. Oh, hi, Allison. I haven't seen you in a long time. Great to see some old friends, familiar faces in the comments. So let's go ahead and dive into the presentation for today. And again, if you have comments or questions, just throw them into the comment section. There's like a 20-second delay, but I'll see them and I will answer them as I see them come up on the screen. So today I want to talk about how to recalibrate your sales efforts for the current reality. And the first thing we need to talk about is what does it mean to calibrate? But if you don't know me, I'm Ben Salisbury. For 8 years now, I've been on my own consulting. I have a large team now of very capable experts that help me meet the needs of clients. Our clients are wineries and distilleries and importers and some distributors from around the world. I have 38 years experience selling wine and spirits. I've become a subject matter expert in the use of technology when it comes to sales. And I've written a lot. I published a YouTube channel. The latest article I wrote for Wine Business Monthly is showing here on the screen. Actually, let me make this a little bit larger. I wrote an article in May for Wine Business Monthly, or the April issue, that was called for these wineries, digital marketing is serious business. I spent 17 years doing on-premise national accounts, 12 for St. Michel Wine Estates and 5 for Constellation brands. So I have a bit of experience in the business, and I now make my living consulting for wineries and craft distilleries. So what do we mean when we talk about calibrating? I love this term, calibrate. I often say recalibrate. In fact, I may use the term recalibrate at times during this presentation. But the idea is to measure where you are and make adjustments. That's the idea of calibrating or recalibrating. And it really is fitting. If you have a wet finger in the wind and you're paying attention to what's going on in our industry, boy, is there a need to recalibrate. And we're going to talk about those things today. Times have really changed. I mean, they have. And if you think they haven't, if you're still doing things the same way you did 5, 6, 10 years ago, you're going to get left behind in a hurry. That's for sure. So let's talk about some of these things. First of all, why do we need to recalibrate at all? Well, it's just ridiculous how much the competition has increased. I mean, just ridiculous increases of competition. I've got some numbers to share with you that'll blow your mind. If you haven't been paying attention, it's just ridiculous how many more brands there are than there used to be, even 5, 6 years ago, and how fewer distributors there are and people to get out there and do the selling. And the bottom line is there's a lot of things that used to work that no longer work, or at least don't work as well. And so they require a recalibration and adjusting to the new reality. And of course, the big thing on everybody's mind these days is that everything is marching towards digital. You see the investments rolling in, you see the mergers taking place, you see the joint venture things happening. The big distributors are in the game, third-party platforms are in the game. There's just a lot going on around digital, data, technology. And so this requires a different way of going about things, and certainly a different skill set where people need to get trained. So I've got 6 things I want to share with you today. I am putting forth that there's 6 areas that you need to recalibrate for. And I'm going to go through them one at a time. This first one is probably where I'm going to be spending most of my time because this is where I see the biggest need. People are really missing the boat on this. They're treating their wine and spirits distributors the same way they did 5, 6, 8 years ago. And this is a huge mistake because there's just so many more brands and there's too few distributors. So the big adjustment you've got to make, the recalibration you've got to make is you've got to adopt this mindset that if it's important to you, you're going to have to do it yourself. Now, I'm not saying you don't need distributors, and I'm not saying distributors can't do stuff for you. They absolutely can. What I'm trying to get you to accept is that the days of distributors being able to do most of it for you are gone. You now have to do most of it yourself. Take whatever you can get from the distributor, that's fine. But the starting point is you're going to have to do a lot of it yourself, especially if it's important to you. You should, if you have time, you should search for these 2 articles on LinkedIn. You'll find them on LinkedIn. Just you can type in the title of these and they'll pop up. But these are 2 great articles you really should read. And the reason I highlight them here, I've written more than 70 articles, but these 2 are highlighted because it speaks to this topic of distributors are just not the distribution engine that they used to be. And you got to be really careful not to depend quite so much on them. So definitely check out those 2 articles. So I have 4 very important questions for you today. Do more states equal more sales? Now, this is a question that I ask of a lot of smaller brands that are just getting started and they're kind of rolling out a few states a year. Their thinking is if I could just get into more states or open up some bigger states, I'm going to sell more. And that could potentially be true unless you're relying on your distributor to do it for you. I would submit to you that more states don't necessarily equal more sales, not like they used to, that's for sure. Another important question is, are distributors the drivers of new sales and distribution that they once were? Now, there was a time when it was the single most powerful driver, and and everybody's careers and strategies revolved around that. Finding a good distributor, working with them, educating them, motivating them, all of those things. I submit to you, it isn't the driver that it used to be just because there's just too many brands, too few distributors. I wish we had more time. I would love to do a whole program just on this third item here, which is, can they truly act nationally? During my time at St. Michel Wine Estates and Constellation Brands, 2 very big companies that time period spanned 17 years, literally half my career. We were dealing with some pretty large distributors. And from my own experience, I never really saw a lot of acting nationally unless it came to the big chains. It was like every state running things the way those state people wanted to run them. And if you're working for one of the big national distributors and you're on this call or listening to the recording, I don't mean to be offensive. It's just they like to put forth a national footprint, but in the execution, it's still very much a state by state thing. There's not a lot you can do to just pick up the phone and make something happen nationally at a distributor. It just doesn't work that way. And then the fourth thing is, are you running plays out of the old playbook or are you using the modern playbook? That's my fourth question about this topic today. Which are you using? Because the old playbook, where you find a distributor, educate the distributor, motivate the distributor, work with the distributor, that playbook doesn't work so well anymore. And there are lots of new plays that you should be running. Some of them I'm going to be talking about today. So, too many brands, too few distributors. That's the new reality. You must accept it. But more importantly, you have to adjust to it. And I don't see a lot of adjusting going on. And in a minute, I'm going to show you some evidence of this that I pulled from the internet today. So it's happening right now. The fact is, distributors, small, medium, large, they're all overwhelmed. This ratio of salespeople to brands is what the problem is. So if you have a large distributor, that's great, a lot of salespeople, but you also have a lot of brands. In smaller distributors, you have fewer brands, but fewer salespeople. So it doesn't matter if they're large, small, or whatever. They're just overwhelmed. That's the nature of the business. That's the new reality. You might as well accept it and then start adjusting to it. They're just not able to do what they used to do. This isn't a function of motivation or incentivizing. It just can't do it. It's like if you're a parent, there's a world of difference between having one child and two. And there's another huge difference between having 2 and 4. It's not double the work. It seems like it's just so much more work. It's just really just a function of what you can and can't do, what you can and can't expect. I love to show this chart because things have changed over time. There was a time, looking at the left part of this graph, where the distributor pretty much did most of the selling, most of the building new points of distribution. Over time, though, the burden has shifted more and more and more to the supplier, to where really, if you're a small supplier, you're pretty much going to have to do most of this yourself. In a second, I'm going to talk about what you can expect the distributor to do for you. Now, I get a lot of pushback on this, and I get a lot of people who tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. And I really want to challenge you to really stop and reconsider this, because what the distributor used to be able to do, they can't do anymore, and you have to adjust. The larger you are as a supplier, the more you are towards the left part of this chart. The smaller you are as a supplier, the more you are towards the right side. It's just a reality. It's just a fact. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I have a great way to illustrate this. Now, this was a snapshot taken a few years ago, so I don't think it's 100% up to date. But I was consulting for a small craft distillery, and they were complaining that they weren't able to get the attention they needed from their distributor. And I have nothing against R&DC. I have mad respect for these guys. So this is not a shot against them. But look at their portfolio. I mean, this was just from the state of Texas only. 3,700 producers, almost 600 suppliers, and 21,000 brands spread across 7 sales divisions. I mean, then here's my consulting client right here in this little yellow highlight. I mean, is it any wonder that you can't get the distributor to do stuff for you? They're just overwhelmed. It's just a function of how things are. So what can you expect from your distributor? I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But first, I want to show you I was very careful when I took these ads out of winejobs.com today. I was very careful to make sure I concealed who the company was. It doesn't really matter. It could be any of the ads that I saw on Wine Jobs. They all have similar things. Look at this one in the middle. Motivating and educating distributor personnel at all levels. That's one of if you go to get this job, that's one of the things that's going to be expected of you. I mean, this is crazy. You can motivate till the cows come home. You can even pay for new distribution. You can educate till you're blue in the face. The minute you leave, you're forgotten and they're on to the next thing. It doesn't mean they're not respectful. It's just so much going on. So it's ridiculous how overwhelmed. And so you thinking that you can hire someone to motivate the distributor and educate the distributor, and that's somehow going to affect your business, you are smoking crack. I mean, here's Gordon Gekko with his 1980s phone. That's how old this way of thinking is. And yet I saw it in a job description today on winejobs.com. Let's look at another one. This has a whole bullet list of stuff that just really doesn't apply anymore. Work hand in hand with distributor management and sales teams on programming and achieving goals. Good luck with that. Conduct wholesaler meetings to what? To promote brand positioning and product education. Oh man, you're talking about a giant waste of time in most cases. And I know this sounds really harsh, and it is not a knock against distributors. It's the reality. It's something that needs to be recalibrated in our industry. You do need to educate the distributor, and you do need to meet with them, and you do need to give them the selling tools that they need. You need to make sure they don't run out of inventory. You need to make sure the pricing and the programming is the way it should be. I'm not saying you don't need that. I'm just saying when it comes to expecting them to go and act to help with your business plan, that's when you need to have a little bit of a reality check. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Many people do. I would love to hear your comments in the chat. If you think I'm making some sense, I'd love to hear that in the comments section too. I look at it this way, and I have a very popular YouTube video called 3 Things You Can Expect from Your Distributor. It's only 9 minutes long. I would watch this video. You can search for it on YouTube. There's 3 things. Hold inventory of your product inventory, deliver to the accounts that you and your team sells to, and then possibly match your efforts. So if you don't have any efforts on the street selling, don't expect the distributor to do much. It's kind of how it works nowadays. These are the 3 things you can expect from your distributor. This is your new starting place. You start with this expectation and build up from there. It's going to reflect how many people you put on the street. It's going to affect the type of people you hire. You don't need people to manage distributors so much as you used to. What you need are feet on the street to go and sell, especially to key accounts and chains, both on and off premise. That is very much how this works. Thank you, Kristen, for confirming that it is a new world. And it's so different than where it used to be. You know, I started working for a distributor, a wine and spirits wholesaler in Houston, Texas in 1984. So I have this perspective, and I remember well the days when that's what distributors did. They would go and sell your products for you. And it's just not that way anymore because there's too many brands. Thank you, Allison, for weighing in. So Allison's been on both sides, and she agrees. You can't expect the distributor to look out for your business the way you once could. Very well said. Thank you for affirming that. This happens all the time. If I had a nickel for every time I hear this, a new distillery owner, same goes for new winery owners. I used to do all the selling myself, but now I have distributors in 2 states. They're so excited. And then 3 months later, they're like, I think I made a huge mistake. The mistake they made was expecting that something was just going to happen. Yeah, and Nathan brings up a good point. Buyers are overwhelmed too. And so they use the distributor to kind of filter through a lot of this stuff. Yeah, these are really, really great points. Because even if Nathan says, even if a producer wants to sell, they need to access to the buyer. So, you know, that's a whole nother topic, Nathan, whether or not you can access chains without the distributor. The distributor would like you to think that you have to have them, that you absolutely have to have them. Now, in some chains, you do. Some chains want you to go through the distributor. But I could make a list for you right now of dozens of companies who are building their own relationships with key accounts, including some of the largest chains. So it's not always the case. It's not an either or, it's a both and. You cannot just rely on them alone. Great topic for another LinkedIn Live event for sure. If you're on Instagram and you're not following this account, Liquor Industry, I highly suggest you do, because you'll get a daily dose of what it looks like from the distributor salesperson's perspective. And it's a real eye-opener for those of you who think that you've got any control at all about getting the distributor to take action on your behalf. This Instagram feed chronicles the days in the life of a distributor sales rep, the people who are constantly having to call in their orders or do surveys or respond to fire drills and emergencies. I'll tell you what, you couldn't pay me enough to be a distributor sales rep these days for what these people go through. It's insane. But you should definitely follow along, because it's a good part of the recalibration, a good part of the reality check. I think I beat that dead horse pretty good. If you're hearing this kind of talk for the first time, welcome to 2022, and it's only going to get worse. But the good news is you can adjust to these things, and you can prosper in spite of these things. So let's move on and talk about some other things that need to be recalibrated. So this is more to do with distilleries and wineries where you're relying on visitors to your facility to make sales. And you should prioritize that above everything else. But it's getting harder and harder because there's so many more craft distilleries and so many more wineries. Let's look at the wine piece for an example. I love VinePair, and if you're not reading their stuff, and they have a pro version of their newsletter, you should definitely get on their the pro version if you're not already on there. But every few years they come out with a little report like this that shows how many wineries are in each state. And the one for 2021 just came out a few months ago, and it shows that there's 16,000 wineries. Did you know Texas has more wineries than Oregon now? It goes California, Washington, Texas, and then Oregon. Texas has over 900 wineries. Imagine what it's like 5 years ago trying to get people to your winery tasting room in Texas versus today trying to get people to your tasting room. It's infinitely harder because there's so many more of them. In 2014, there were 9,000 wineries in the US. Today, there's 16,000. And you would think it's slowing down, but it's not. This is part of that new reality. So what you need to do to make the adjustment is you have to learn to sell beyond just your tasting room, beyond your distillery event center. You want to optimize that for sure, but you have to have some more tricks in your playbook. And if you haven't already seen this, I've been advertising this on Facebook and Instagram. So if you haven't seen it on your feed, you're probably not on there very often. But do you know that 350 winery owners and distillery owners have downloaded my checklist called Beyond the Tasting Room? And if you want to get your hands on it and you don't already, there's my email address on the screen. Just send me an email and I'll pop over the PDF. It covers 8 different areas of how you can grow your sales outside, beyond the 4 walls of your tasting facility. So I won't take a lot of time going through this today, but it's definitely one of the things you've got to recalibrate and optimize for. The next thing is, this is something I've been spending a lot of time on lately, and you're going to hear a lot more from me about this idea of outbound marketing and sales versus inbound marketing and sales. Let me explain. Outbound is also known as interruption marketing. It's an ad, or imagine back in the day when you were watching TV and there were only 3 TV stations and you had no control when a commercial came on. That's interruption marketing. You're driving down the freeway, you're stuck in traffic, there's a big giant billboard. It's trying to catch your attention. That's interruption marketing. So are most Facebook ads. So is boosting posts. So are all kinds of things that we do in the wine and spirits industry, that we think that more is better. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. It's really not the way to succeed in a hyper-crowded market. The best way to succeed is inbound marketing, where you earn attention organically. You offer things of value. You draw people to you. You take off your salesperson hat and you put on your I'm rolling up my sleeves here to help you and your business. How are you helping your restaurant clients sell more product? How are you helping them reduce inventory? How are you helping your retail accounts with their assortment? There's a lot of things you could be doing as a partner, a business partner, to help them. Inbound marketing is the adjustment that you need to be making. I hope that makes sense. If not, you're going to be hearing a lot more from me about this idea. Then maybe some examples of inbound marketing would help. A free guide to selling, like my taste. This is an example of this. I created this free guide, how to sell beyond the tasting room. I offered it free to wineries and distilleries everywhere. 350 wineries and distilleries requested a copy and were all too glad to give me their email address in exchange for it. And now I've been patiently building a relationship with those people, not trying to sell them stuff. That'll come much later. Just trying to be a good helper, a good service provider to that community. That's a good example of what it looks like. So what does that look like for your winery or your distillery? Well, I have many, many examples I can show you of how this works. So another thing that needs to be, another reality that needs to be adjusted for, to recalibrate for, is there are certain things that just can't be scaled. It wasn't that long ago where nothing could really be scaled unless you're on TV or radio. Everything else had to be done in person by a live, warm body, a human being. That is not the case anymore. And I don't see nearly enough effort and energy and investment being put into this on behalf of wineries and distilleries to automate and scale what it is they're doing. I just have a few examples for you. I mean, I'm all for trade tastings, in-store tasting demos, pulling samples and putting them in a bag and going from account to account. All that's fine and fairly effective. It's just not scalable. How can you reach thousands of people at one time? That's how you're going to make a difference in your sales when you're competing against 20, 30, 40,000 other brands trying to do the same thing. It's no longer enough to just have great product and a great packaging and a great story. It's not even enough to have organic and sustainable product that you're making your finished goods from. All that does is get you to the starting line. You really have to be able to scale. And I won't have time to go into a lot of this today, but if you haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, right, that certain things just can't be scaled, whatever requires your physical presence or the physical presence of someone on your payroll, that's just not very scalable. So you need to learn about and lean into the things that are. This is a great thing to recalibrate for. Okay. The fifth thing that you should be recalibrating for is this mindset about doing more with less. And the way you do it is with technology and data. I know this is not very sexy. And I run into people all the time who are like, I didn't sign up to be a CRM expert. I love wine. I have a passion for wine. I like talking about the wine. I like working with the product. I like seeing people's faces light up when they try my product. I get that. There's nothing wrong with that. Guess what, though? It's not enough anymore. You want to compete today in today's hyper-competitive world? You better have something more than that. And leveraging technology is the best way to do it. Let's look at a couple of examples. Lead generation. We teach lead generation, and it's one of the most fastest growing parts of what we do. People coming to us and saying, I've seen your lead magnets. I've seen lead magnets you've created for other wineries and distilleries. Can you show us how to do that too? Generating leads through digital advertising where you're partnering with restaurants and retailers. This is a powerful way to grow your trade-only email list. It's also a powerful way to grow your consumer email list. And there's a real science and methodology to it, but it's very powerful. CRM is another important technology that could really multiply your efforts and help you leverage so you do more with less. And account-based marketing, also known as key account targeting or key account marketing, which leverages an 80-20 approach. Not all accounts are equal, not even close. You have to fish where the fish are. You have to do more with less. But it requires data and knowledge and understanding of the markets and the accounts before you can leverage that. But these are skills that people need to learn. You need to recognize that you've got to be calibrating for these things. And then the last thing that you want to calibrate for, and I'm going to end with this because I just can't believe how many people are not leveraging their website like they should be. Oh, they've got a website and it's fine, it's adequate. But for today's reality, an adequate website, an average website is death. You are really falling behind, and you're falling behind fast. The adjustment that you need to make is make sure that your website is absolutely cutting edge, mobile first, as fast as it can be. If you have DTC, and you should, whether you're wine or spirits, you need to be leaning into DTC off your website. That shopping experience has to be absolutely seamless for the user. And most of what is sold is going to be done on a mobile device. And it has to be optimized for search. We could do a whole session just on SEO. But this is so critical. Let's look at a few things here. This is an actual website. I don't want to identify who it is, but this is a website that's up and running right now. It was built 10, 11 years ago. If your website's more than 2 years old, you need to be taking a serious look at it. Things are changing so fast in terms of how people search for things and what kind of results Google returns for people's searches. So if this is how to know if your website's outdated. You're using old style web programming. You've got a lack of responsive design or a cluttered design. background images that don't load, outdated content, poor conversions and traffic, and a clunky shopping experience. If I go onto your website right now and I find any of these things, you can find them too. Okay. And you need to address them. This is not, make this the year that you find out what is required to use your website to compete effectively, and then make those changes. You know, it used to cost 15 or 20 grand to have someone create a new website. You don't need to spend that kind of money anymore. For a couple of thousand max, you can have a great website that does all the things you need to do. Again, it needs to be mobile first and foremost. It needs to be simple, super simple design, fast loading. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet is it needs to be optimized to enroll new email subscribers. Because when it comes to leveraging technology and competing in this hyper competitive place we're in, your email list is the point of the spear for your sales efforts, both from a consumer standpoint and from a trade standpoint. So I don't have time to go into exactly how to do that, but I'm here for you if you want more information about that. So those are the 6 things that I wanted to cover today: the reality that needs to be calibrated for and the adjustment that needs to be made. Now, if this has captured your interest and you want more, boy, have I got great news for you. The timing couldn't be better, because next Wednesday, June 8th at 1:00 Eastern, I'm going to be doing a private live training, and I would like to invite you to attend. Now, the only catch is you need to apply for it. I'm trying to separate the curious from the serious. I don't have time to entertain tire kickers in this seminar, because I'm going to be sharing my 3-part framework for how to take this thing to the next level when it comes to your sales for spirits or wine. So I would love to see you there. All you have to do is go to winesalesstimulator.com. When you get there, you're going to see this page. Click that Learn More button, and it'll take you to the simple application page where you can apply for this free training. Now, if you are not able to attend live on Wednesday because of a schedule conflict, I want you to apply anyway, because only the people who have applied and were accepted are going to get a link to the recording. This is, without a doubt, one of the most ambitious training projects I've ever done. Certainly, I've ever done for free. So I want you to be part of this. If you're watching this live or you're watching the recording of today's session and you like what you see and you want more, please apply to attend this event. So I think that's it. I'm going to hang out for a little bit. If anyone has questions, you can put them in the comments and I will address them as they come through. There's about a 10 or 15 second delay between the time you type and the time I see it. But I'm happy to answer these questions for you. I hope that this was useful. I hope that it caused you to think and to maybe want to recalibrate on certain things. It's kind of the cornerstone of our business to be here to help wineries and distilleries everywhere, all over the world, make these adjustments. And I'm always happy to answer questions for free via email. So let me put my email address back up here. It's just part of my inbound strategy. I try to be available for people to as they need it. So there's my email address if you have questions. I don't see you are welcome, Christian. Thanks so much for giving up your time to visit this today. Thank you, Allison. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Have a great weekend, everyone. And I hope that you'll apply and for next week's training, and I hope to see you there in the chat. Thank you very much.